All right, it's time to get started working on our third biomolecule, proteins. Let's get on to that. Proteins. We've been talking about our biomolecules with monomers, the building blocks of these biomolecules, and polymers, the bunches of monomers bonded together. So the monomer for our proteins are going to be called amino acids. And there's 20 different ones that are each represented by a 3-letter segment. So for example, MET, that's one amino acid, okay? We produce about 10 of these amino acids naturally, and then the rest of them we have to eat in order for our body to have them. So that's about half and half. That means we need to eat proteins in order for our bodies to function properly. The order of these amino acids in the chains is what determines what that protein is used for, so what's its function. And the proteins that we need in our body contain the elements C, H, O, and N. So we've moved on from CHO, from carbs and lipids, and now we have CHON, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So proteins have nitrogen. This is our new element in our biomolecule of proteins, okay? But remember, all three have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Proteins just have an extra one, nitrogen, okay? Now, within these proteins, sometimes there is a variable group that is different for each amino acid, and that is represented by a letter R sometimes. You don't have to worry too much about that yet. This is just basic biology. So all you need to know is that that is a variable group and it changes for each amino acid. But our main focus are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Okay. Now, there's different kinds of proteins. We have our non-polar proteins, which you should be familiar with what non-polar means now, and polar proteins. Now, depending on the charge of these proteins, we also have positive charged and negatively charged proteins. And this is just the list of, I believe these are all 20. 10, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, these are all 20. And they're just separated out into categories of which ones are polar, which ones are non-polar, which ones are positively charged and negatively charged. Do not worry, you're not required to memorize all this information. It's just so you can have a visual of what they kind of look like. So here, you should be able to see, we have the glycine. That's one example of an amino acid, and the 3-letter segment that we use for naming this is GLY. So when we are writing amino acid sequences, we only use the first 3 letters because that's just easier than writing out the entire amino acid. Now, like I said, you don't have to memorize these. You don't even have to know how to say all of these, because remember, we only use the first 3 letters when we are making our amino acid sequences. And you can tell none of these have the same first 3 letters, okay? That is done on purpose so that we make sure we're always focused on the correct one. And now here in these little highlighted boxes, those are those variable groups, the R groups that I mentioned earlier. So you notice how they're all different for each one of these amino acids. The main chain is basically the same. You have H3, N+, HC, CO, O-, okay? And that is the same on all of these. And then that other group that's highlighted at the bottom, that's what makes each amino acid different. But take notice that they are also only composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and I believe nitrogen. There might be 1 or 2 that has sulfur, but that just is an add-on. This one, it's the same. Other than that, it's only carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, okay? Now we said the monomer are the amino acids. When we get a bunch of amino acids together, like in this chain, that is what we call a polypeptide. That's a bunch of amino acids bonded together. And they can be shown 2 ways. So your amino acids look like this, right? We talked about the 3 H's and CH, COO-, and then the variable group and they can be bonded to each other like this, or you can see a representation where there's just like a little blob with the 3 letters of the amino acid, making things simpler rather than drawing out the entire variable group every single time. So whenever you see these chains of 3-lettered groups, that's a polypeptide. And that is the polymer for proteins. Now, the structure of proteins is very interesting. I was actually lucky enough to be able to work on some protein folding in college. That is a very difficult process, and it's very, very intense, a lot of computer science, but it is a very important field because the way we study proteins and how they function and their structure and the relationship with that will be able to help us understand different parts of our body and be able to help us develop cures for many diseases. So this is a process that's done a lot, especially for cancer research. So protein folding, it's very useful. Now, all you gotta know is that there are different levels of structures. The primary structure, when you have like this beaded necklace kind of chain, it's just the chain of a bunch of amino acids bound together. Now, when we go into a secondary protein structure, that's when you start seeing a little bit of folding, so it looks more tightly packed like a ribbon, and you see a little bit of waviness on it. So this is an alpha helix and a beta pleated sheet. Those are just names, you don't have to worry about them. Then when they start getting more complex, these sheets and helixes start folding into a 3D kind of process. So instead of seeing like a 2D modeled image, you start seeing these 3D folding patterns within each other, right? Side to side, not yet mixed, that's your tertiary. And then when they start getting more and more as one, the protein starts consisting of more than one chain, so they start mixing with each other. That's when you get to the quaternary proteins, okay? This is not incredibly tedious, just know there's primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. And the more tangled they get farther down. And each structure tells you it's a different function. So we'll get into some of the functions in just a second. So proteins are there to provide some structure. So for example, your bones, your muscle, your hair, your skin, your nails, all of these are providing structure to your body. And that is a very big use of proteins. So the more proteins you consume, the better your hair looks, the better your skin looks. Protein is good for that. It's also very important for muscle building. That's why a lot of athletes will take protein shakes before working out. They need to provide their body with the structure to build on that. They also regulate body processes through enzymes, which we will be talking about later on as soon as we finish our biomolecules, our next biomolecule. But enzymes are an important protein that really helps speed up reactions in our body. And we'll talk, like I said, in more detail on a full, I think it's 2 videos on just enzymes. So be on the lookout for that. Just remember, enzymes are proteins. And we have transport materials as well that are proteins. So in our blood, we need proteins to transport oxygen throughout our body. They also help us with immunity. They make the antibodies that fight against the bad bacteria, and they provide energy. So again, protein does provide energy like carbohydrates and lipids, not as much and as quick energy as the other two, but proteins basically do all of the above. You know, they provide your structure, they give you better working body processes, they help transport things through your body, they make things to protect your body, and they provide you energy. So really, they are the most complete so far, right? They give you a little bit of everything. So if you're not sure of, if you have to choose one of the biomolecules we've talked about so far, and it's giving you a lot of information that they do a lot of things, it's probably a protein. So some foods that are high in protein are usually our meats, and you may have noticed that when we did the diet plan assignment. So we have meats like chicken, turkey, fish, eggs are also considered protein. Nuts, a lot of nuts are considered proteins. So a lot of nuts and some seeds are also considered protein, some beans, that kind of stuff. It's very, very important for you to have proteins in your body. So that is it for today. If you are not on the forms page, please go back to the hub, click on the forms page, answer the questions below, and then submit your screenshot to the hub once you have finished. And that is it for today. I'll see you in tomorrow's video and tomorrow's class actually first. So bye.